Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, New York City's three public libraries teamed up to protest against the planned $36.2 million budget cuts at City Hall. The Associate Director for Central Bronx Neighborhood Library Network joins me later to discuss the joint protest. How will these cuts to the library affect your community? Then, the B-Side Carnegie Hall music program uses creative experiences to nurture the musical talent of all levels and harness the power of the arts to make a meaningful difference in people's lives. The Director of Social Impact Programs for Carnegie Hall's Weill Music Institute joins me to share more details. Why is it important for young musicians to have this experience? After that, biometric identifier information, also known as BII for facial recognition, is now being used by some stores to help fight against crime. The supervising attorney for the criminal defense practice for Bronx offenders joins me later to discuss this matter. Are these new tools infringing on civil liberties? And finally, for the first time since 1969, the DOS changed the rules for garbage set-out times. The Deputy Commissioner for Public Affairs and Customer Experience for New York City's Department of Sanitation joins me later to give you all the latest. What are the new rules for business owners and residents? So stay tuned, all this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello, everyone. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today is Tuesday, April 11th. You are now watching Open, a program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet.TV. The New York Public Library teamed up with the Brooklyn and Queens Public Library in an effort to protect libraries across the city. The three organizations testified at the preliminary fiscal year 2024 budget hearing to highlight the critical role libraries play in our community. Joining me to discuss this effort is Associate Director of Central Bronx Neighborhood Library Network for the NYPL, Melissa Davis. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, can you talk a little bit about the role the NYPL plays in New York City?
Oh, of course. So we all grew up going to libraries as children, checking out books. But now libraries, we play such a bigger part in New Yorkers' lives. We are community hubs. We connect people to information and we connect people to other people. We provide after school homework help, games, book clubs. We just have a menu of services, including early literacy for toddlers, after school and homework help for kids. As I mentioned, teen centers, college and career prep, resume help. Um, all these services are free, and that's why libraries are so wonderful, and that's why they're so important to New York City and to New Yorkers.
Now, can you talk a little bit about those budget cuts? What will happen or what will it affect, if they actually go through and they actually do cut the budget?
So right now it's very early in the budget process. We've always had a good relationship with the mayor and with the city council. So we are optimistic that the budget will be restored, but we don't know. Um, we do know that there are tough choices to be made coming up ahead. So those are possibilities, but nothing is firm, and we're hoping for the best. We have always worked with City Hall and with the mayor, and we're optimistic.
Now, I want to talk about your like how you guys teamed up with the Brooklyn and Queens Public Library. I think that was pretty amazing because I actually learned that the NYPL isn't for the entire New York City, that there is a Brooklyn and Queens Public Library. So can you talk about that, collaboration? And, is this an issue that libraries across the city are facing just in general?
So we did have a rally at City Hall on March 20th, and that was really a combination of, like you said, the three public library systems in New York City, which is the New York Public Library, Brooklyn Public Library, and Queens. And we all rallied together. We had about 200 people carrying signs, holding um, cards, wearing the orange t-shirts that read invest in libraries. And we're so lucky to have such a strong support with all three library systems. We've also had patrons send over 30,000 letters to City Hall saying, please don't cut our libraries. And this is just the beginning of the campaign. In fact, we also had two teenagers who used our services and spoke very movingly and highly of how libraries helped them through the pandemic and helped with school.
Now, can you actually tell me a little bit more about this rally? How did it feel to have support from all of these people? You said there was about, I believe you said either 30,000 or 300,000. Either way, that's still pretty impressive. What was it like to have that support?
So the Invest in Libraries campaign is a partnership with the three library systems. And it's amazing to have the support because although we are three systems, we have a common goal, which is providing New Yorkers with information, providing New Yorkers with a community location. And like it says, libraries make NYC stronger. That's only possible with the support of our patrons, our city council, our elected officials.
Now, can you tell me a little bit more about the Invest in Libraries campaign? Is this a new campaign or is this something that has been ongoing for quite some time?
So we've always been advocating together for the budget because we believe in the importance of serving New Yorkers. So Invest in Libraries, we ask our patrons to send letters to City Hall urging them to stop the cuts. If you would like to participate, you can go to NYPL.org and you can get involved and you can sign an online letter to help support the libraries.
Now, I know you're very optimistic, but just so that everybody can get a clearer picture, if the city moves forward with these budget cuts, how will this affect the library, let's say next year or in the years to come?
So tough choices will have to be made for sure. Clearly, we are hoping that it doesn't come to that. As I noted, we do have a good working relationship with Mayor Adams, and we are hopeful that the budget cuts will be restored. So it's still too early to tell what the impact would be.
Now, the library is more than just books. I grew up in the library as well. So, I love letting people know that there's more to the library than just reading. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the programs the NYPL offers?
Sure. So we do have early literacy for toddlers. So this is a great program that our youngest readers, they can have a space to go and enjoy and start that journey for literacy. And we want to empower all of our younger readers, just to start learning how to read, how to check out materials. And then we all have that favorite childhood book. So we're hoping that those memories can start with the library with our early literacy programs. We also have after school and homework help for kids. And this is a free service that we invite students to come to their local libraries and they get to meet with after school tutors and they can have that one-on-one support to kind of help them if it's just doing the homework for that day or if there's a specific project or something they just need a little bit more attention and focus on. We're here for that as well. We also have college and career prep for our teens. So we all know after high school, we have to make some decisions. And sometimes that could be the path of going to a 2 or 4 year college, or that can also be going another career path in which it could be taking some courses, getting certificates, getting certified. So we want to expose our teens to all the options that they have out there, and they're not limited as well. We also have ESL classes in many of our locations. We have adult education, which includes Tech Connect classes. We offer tax prep at some of our locations. And again, this is all free.
That's so amazing to hear. And I'm so happy that you highlighted that there's stuff for people of all ages, because people often think the library is just for younger children or, people in high school. But there's something for everybody there. Now, I want to learn a little bit more about your particular role with Central Bronx Neighborhood Library Network. That is something that's a little bit new to me. So can you tell me a little bit more about that sector of the library?
Sure. So the Bronx, we are divided into three networks. So I cover the Central Bronx, which kind of ranges from the Classens Point Library, so that's Morrison and Soundview, all the way up to the Bronx Library Center. So I'm over here by Fordham on Kingsbridge. So that's the Bronx Library Center, which is the hub location for the Central Bronx. We are also considered the flagship location for the Bronx. And if you have not had an opportunity to pass by the Bronx Library Center, I definitely invite you. We are a sixth-floor building. We have 4 public service departments. So we do cater to children from our youngest readers to our oldest readers. So for the Central Bronx, I do cover about 12 locations.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to learn about that because that was something a little bit new to me. So thank you so much for sharing. Now, I want to say, what can people do or what needs to happen to ensure that all the programs that you mentioned, and everything that's happening at the NYPL stays secure, that, those things don't really go away? What needs to happen?
So as I just said, we would love for everyone just to come out to support the libraries. We would love for everyone to go to nypl.org, send one of those letters to our elected officials, send it to the mayor. It only takes about a minute. But you can also do one other thing. You can come by your local library. We are here for you, and we want New Yorkers to come. Our community is big. We always want to reach more people. The bigger we are, the more New Yorkers who use our services, the stronger we all are.
Now, I also want to talk about, since we mentioned that, the library is more than just books, I understand that you have a new program titled Hip Hop at 50. Can you tell us a little bit more about that program?
So as we all know, this year we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So we are rolling out a menu of programs for all ages. We are celebrating hip hop. And here in the Bronx, we will have diverse programs, and it will go from like book discussions, some block parties, some live performances, of course, craft programs. So we are just going to encompass hip hop. And of course, we have to celebrate that in the Bronx. So we're just happy to join in the festivities for celebrating hip hop.
And I think it's really cool because I think that when people think about hip hop, for a long time, it wasn't associated with education or books or reading. So, why was it important to kind of merge these two things and celebrate, just the culture of the library, but also adding hip hop into that?
Well, if you think about it, hip hop, musically, lyrics, it's poetry with music, the words, the expressions, and of course, we want to embrace that here at the library. We have a good group of following of patrons that they also participate in poetry slams, and that's something that we really want to highlight as well. We all have our hidden talents. So it's just great to celebrate that and that we can have our patrons join in and they can use that platform not only to express themselves, to express their love for the library, express their love for New York, for the Bronx, and express their love for the hip hop culture.
And my last question, I know that sometimes in the Bronx, it's easy to stay, kind of in your own little bubble, like in your home. What would you say to get somebody to kind of just explore what the NYPL has to offer?
Well, if you go to our website, nypl.org, you can hit the locations tab and you can see that there are neighborhood branches everywhere, all across the 3 boroughs. So the New York Public Library, we cover the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island. And there's libraries within walking distance. So we're hoping that everyone has access to this free information. We have access to this community hub. You can come, you can spend the day with us if you're just there for information, or if you're there to meet other people. What other place can you go that would allow you to be here and enjoy all these free services? So I do want to express to everyone, please go on our website and you can see not only our locations, we also have our events page. So you can search by the event that you're interested in if you want to narrow it down by that, or if you want to narrow it down by the location closest to you.
All right, well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
To find out more how you can support the NYPL's efforts to fight against these proposed budget cuts, please go to their website at www.nypl.org or follow them on social media at NYPL. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more Open right after this.
Even though we didn't grow up together, he's my favorite brother.
Hey, sis.
I'm the baby of the family, and he's the gentle giant.
What you know about Port Georgia?
Man, please, that's a classic.
You know when they say people are a rare breed? Yeah, he's that.
I'm sorry, I'll be back in a few hours.
Don't worry, Shug, you know I'm for you.
I know.
Go get the football.
That was my favorite memory. He was always for ya. This is a true story of me, Bridget Floyd, and this guy, George Perry Floyd Jr., my big brother.
Is it time yet?
It's time.
Come start time for dinner.
Oh, turn it back on.
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
COVID-19 has changed how we spend weekends with the girls. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to brunching instead of late-night munching. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts. As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions.
Should I get it?
Is it safe? Should I wait?
It's okay to have questions. Now get the facts at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches? Ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You didn't even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, Backpack Kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Welcome back. This prestigious music hall offers teens and young adults the opportunity to experience and understand the ins and outs of the music industry. Carnegie Hall launched the B-Side music program, allowing aspiring artists to connect with industry professionals. Director of Social Impact Programs for Carnegie Hall's Weill Music Institute, Ayanna joined me to discuss the program. Ayanna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, can you tell viewers about Carnegie Hall and the legacy it has in New York City? I haven't had much experience with it, but I know it's like somewhere that's like really, really cool and has a lot of history. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and you have to come visit. So yeah, when I think about the legacy of Carnegie Hall, I really think about its popular perception of its concert halls and its being the aspirational destination for the world's best musicians. But what I also really love about the program, about the hall, is how it's also New York City's stage for the world's most impactful activists and artists. So like the stages have hosted, and been a platform for people like Booker T. Washington in history, Marcus Garvey, Paul Robeson, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and for artists like Nina Simone or Ella Fitzgerald, Celia Cruz, the Puerto Rico Symphony Orchestra, to today with artists, from the Bronx's D Nice and Club Quarantine Live to Venezuela's Gustavo Dudamel. So it's not just the acoustics of the hall and, the place where it has a reputation for world-renowned artists. It's also a platform for people to have their voices and the power of their voices be lifted in artistry or in activism, to support and lift other people. So it really has quite a long and prestigious history.
Now, can you talk about some of the program the hall offers just in general?
Yeah. So Carnegie Hall has the Weill Music Institute, which is our education arm. And so we've been working with young people for more than 10 years in workshops that build skills, that develop personal artistry. We have programs that are both community based and also happen at Carnegie Hall. So we have programs that I think people would consider to be the norm at Carnegie Hall, like the National Youth Orchestra, which is like a pre-professional program for young musicians from all over the country who come to the hall and then they do tours. And then we have programs like Future Music Project, which is actually a partnership with the Administration for Children's Services. And we have music, songwriting, music production classes that happen in after school programs and also happen where young people are incarcerated in New York City. And so we've been developing ways to engage young people around career exploration. And then we have early childhood programs. We have a lullaby program where moms are writing lullabies to their unborn child and parents can write lullabies to their new children. And we have school-based programs. So we serve more than 800,000 people each year through local, national, and international programs. And most programs are low cost or free and really tap into the creativity of audiences of all ages, inviting them to make their own music in all genres. And most of the programs are free.
That's amazing. I'm so happy that you kind of let everybody know because as I mentioned, I wasn't too familiar prior to this. So I'm so happy I know about that. Now, can you talk about the B side? One, I think it's a really cool name. So if you do know, can you actually tell me why is it that name? Because I think it's pretty cool. And then can you just talk about the program in general?
I love that you asked that question. So I am going to give a shout out to one of my colleagues, Miguel de los Santos, because Miguel was the person who came up with the name The B-Side. We were talking about how to begin this program where we wanted to teach young people about the business side of the music industry. And, you know, this generation of young people may or may not necessarily remember that there used to be records and records had a B-side. And so we wanted to kind of pay homage to the history of the record industry, but also the fact that we want to teach young people about the business side of the music industry.
Oh, that's really cool. See, I had no idea. I love like the musical, history element to that. So that's so cool. Now, can you talk about, how did the program begin?
Yeah, so as I said, we've been working in communities and with partner organizations for a little over 10 years. And one of the recurring themes was like, how do you build pathways to the creative arts, to careers in the creative arts? Young people wanted to know how to have a living wage. How do I get careers and jobs in music? And we wanted to provide a rich learning experience for teens in New York City. And we also wanted to think about how to address the lack of representation of young people of color in the music industry, but particularly in executive leadership. We found a lot of research that told us that the C-suite level, where there are executives, there are not a lot of people of color. And, the music industry has a lot of representation in terms of artists of color, but how do we get careers, young people in careers, so that there's also representation of young people of color in careers? So all of those things together really was the impetus for starting the B-Side.
Now, I'm really glad that you pointed that out because I do notice that a lot of music programs aimed towards children, young people, or as you mentioned, people of color, are usually focused on talent and not so much, the business side, or, a lot of people think that you can't make a living in the industry of music. And so I think it's really, really cool that you kind of mentioned that and kind of did something that a lot of other organizations, at least I don't, see happening. So I think that was really interesting. Now, why did you want to focus, I guess I should say, like on the music industry? I feel like it could be a little bit intimidating to some people when they think of like the professional side of the music industry. So can you just explain why, there was intense focus on that?
Yeah, I think to your point that there are a lot of programs for children as it relates to music. Young people in our program, many of them are aspiring artists, but many of them are not. But we wanted to have a program where if you are a musician, you understand that your art form is supported by a business, a robust business. I think about the example of like hip hop. Like this year is the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And 50 years ago, hip hop was like young, hungry kids, right? Creative, they had energy, but they were young, so they could also be easily manipulated by an industry that was driven by income, by this new innovative art form. And so, I think our responsibility as leaders in the arts is to help young people both to engage in this business, but to like enrich this new generation of artists so that they lead the industry. So it was important for us to focus not only on diversity and sustainability, but access. How do you get into this business that supports this tremendous industry, this global industry? So it's not just that you're an artist, so you don't have to understand the business. You have to sign a contract, right? What does it all mean? How do you find out who the people are working in this field? And so we wanted to focus on helping young people's both musicianship and artistry, but we do that at Carnegie Hall. In this instance, for the B-side, we want to focus on what's the business that supports your musicianship and artistry, and how do you meet people in that business? So this program focuses on bringing visibilities to careers in the music industry. It focuses on building a community of young people and young professionals, and developing those professional skills and like bringing them into contact with people who are already working in the industry.
Now, I understand that in the program, there will be guest speaker panels as well as field trips. That sounds like a lot of fun. So can you just explain, what will that experience look like?
Yeah, so we will have guest speakers, and we've had guest speakers, and this week is our so we've done two cohorts, 14 to 22-year-olds. And so in February, we had 14 to 17-year-olds, and this week we have 18 to 22-year-olds. So they are, each day there's a speaker. The speakers are in artist management, in A&R, in marketing and radio promotions, in legal, finance, young people learning about contracts, about royalties. And then there are also engineers. There's a field trip to the studio, so they get to spend time with some really amazing producers and engineers who are like at the top of their game in the music industry. And the young people who participated in February, they also had the opportunity to go to Universal Recording and take a tour of their studio and their offices, and got to speak with their staff from all types of different levels of the record label.
Now, this sounds like a really amazing opportunity. What are the requirements to participate in this program?
You need to be between 14 and 22 years old. You need to be curious. You need to want to collaborate with your peers, and you need to bring your creativity, and then you apply to the program.
Okay, so you don't have to be like super skilled in any instrument or anything like that. That's amazing. So it gives everybody kind of an opportunity to join the program. That's awesome.
Everybody has an opportunity to join. If you're between 14 and 22 years old, we want you to join. And especially if you are interested and curious, if you've never done anything like this, you want to figure out like where you want to go. You want to explore what careers are available in the music industry. You want to learn about what those careers are. You do not have to be a musician. You do not have to play an instrument.
Now, I'm curious to know, I guess, before we go, what are some misconceptions a lot of young musicians have about the music industry?
There's misconceptions of young musicians, young aspiring leaders, and there's misconceptions of families. And we want to address both. So I think that we are in an information age. So if you're 17, 18, 14 years old, you were born into a place of lots of information on your phone, social media, everywhere around you there's information. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's more knowledge. And so young people, I think, are very adept at knowing that there's a studio. They all, a lot of young people record. They have friends who are like starting their own recording studios. But I think the misconception is that the person in front of the camera, the artist, is like it. Like that's where the money is. but there are tons of other career opportunities in the music industry that exist. And so I think probably one of the biggest misconceptions is really less of a misconception and more of just not having exposure to what those other careers are. And that's what we want to do, is be that bridge, especially for young people of color.
Well, Ayanna, thank you so much for joining me and talking about this.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And please come visit Carnegie Hall.
Of course, I kind of want to now, so thank you. Now,
Good.
if you or someone you know is interested in this program, please go to their website at www.carnegiehall.org to find out how you can be a part of this program or to learn more. Also, don't forget to follow them on social media at Carnegie Hall. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.
I'll see ya.
After a basketball game, a black teenage boy, Brandon, reads his texts in his family group chat. Auntie Flo, congrats on the big win. Mom, that's my baby. Brandon replies, thanks y'all. In a park, his sister Maya texts, where are we celebrating? Dad replies, home. Mom texts, I got dinner going. Auntie Flo replies, ooh, I can't wait. Then receives a FEMA flood watch text alert. She texts the family, anyone see that weather alert? We need a plan to stay safe, especially after last year. Ready has a list of resources at ready.gov/plan. In his workshop, Dad sends a photo of emergency supplies and texts, looks like we need flashlights and batteries. Leaving a store with a shopping bag, Brandon replies, I got us covered. Mom texts, I'll check in with Grandma and Papa. Maya texts, thanks Auntie, feeling good about this plan.
Got some batteries.
Auntie Flo replies, love y'all, we gotta stay safe. Later, the family.
Feel like he gets on every time I see you.
Stay connected. Time for that.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Thanks for hearing me out, bro.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Dear moms and dads, what you have achieved here today is going to help us and our futures. It is why we are coming up on stage to collect your diplomas.
You know it's true.
Mom, love you always.
Everything I do.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
STEM is everywhere. Like here, behind the scenes of The Walking Dead.
When we break down clothes, we tumble it with trisodium phosphate, rock salt, and dish detergent.
We stitched together images of our model and created a 3D set that can be walked through in a VR headset.
We're able to turn 12 walkers into 1,000 walker boards.
STEM can create new worlds on and off the screen. What will you make with STEM? Get inspired at shecanstem.com.
Welcome back. What once seemed like part of a futuristic world has now become a present-day reality. Facial recognition is the latest technique several shops and law enforcement are using to prevent crime. However, this act is causing concerns among some people, sparking a debate and leaving many questioning whether or not it's infringing on our civil liberties. Kaitlin Jackson-Roll, a supervising attorney for the criminal defense practice at Bronx Defender, now joined me to discuss. Kaitlin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to jump right into it. I thought this was really interesting because this was something new to me. Now, according to NBC New York, businesses have begun using biometric identifier information, also known as BII, for facial recognition. For those who aren't familiar, can you just explain what that is?
Absolutely. So biometrics are anything that can be used to identify you based on a physical characteristic. So, for example, fingerprints are biometric, eye scans, facial recognition, voice recognition. So biometric identifier information would be something that a surveillance system is using to track individual people based on some type of physical or auditory characteristic.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that it included fingerprints. So that means that some of us, or a lot of us actually, if you have a smartphone, are pretty familiar with this type of technology. So thank you so much for, I guess, clarifying that. I didn't know. Now, as I mentioned, we're talking about how law enforcement is kind of getting into this kind of field. Can you just tell me what your thoughts on, the laws and the law just keeping up with the access to all this new technology?
Yeah, I think it is absolutely true that technology has moved much more quickly than the pace of the law to protect our privacy. And that's true outside of just the context of facial recognition. For example, whenever you search for something you want to buy on your phone, we all have experienced that immediately ads start popping up for the same thing. That's because third parties are collecting and selling your data. You can imagine a world in which we have laws to prevent that. But that's not something that the government has done a good job of. And the same is true with facial recognition. There's just very little that limits third parties or law enforcement's use of this kind of potentially privacy invading technology.
Now, I know that anytime, like especially with the ads, people just don't respond well to it. Can you just give me your opinion on why you think that so many people just don't really like that feeling of, just always being watched or being monitored?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is sort of a basic idea that most of us have, that we have a fundamental right to be left alone by people and organizations and the government when we haven't chosen to interact with them. And so I think it can be really uncomfortable when truly, the product that you're not selling, but someone else is making money off of is your information, whether that's what your face looks like, what your iris scans are like, what your search history is. Because I think it's twofold, right? It both invades our privacy, but it's also a real commodity. There's a lot of money to be made from your information that you didn't sell. And I think both of those things can be uncomfortable for people.
Now, in regard to just facial recognition, are there any laws that require people to be notified when they are being recorded or facially recognized?
That's a really good question, and it depends significantly on where you're located in the country. I'm not aware of any laws that require notification of just simple recording. I think, as most of us are aware, surveillance cameras have been in use for a long time in businesses, and I don't know of any state that requires the public to be notified simply because someone has a surveillance camera. That said, there are some laws on the books that are in some places that require notification when biometric information is being collected. So, for example, in New York City, there is a law that requires businesses that are collecting biometric data to notify customers. Whether or not that actually alleviates the privacy concerns, I think, is really up for debate. You can imagine a world where every business starts collecting this information. And then at that point, even if you're notified, how do you opt out? Or, for example, say your pharmacy, say you go to CVS and that is where you get your medication, and CVS is collecting this information. Even if they put a notice on the door, you don't really have the option to opt out and not go there. So I think simple notification is a step, but whether it's a meaningful step is up for debate.
That's a really good point that you mentioned, because like, as you said, if everywhere is doing it, it's like, well, you can't stop interacting with society, right? You still have to go out into the world. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Now, I really want to get your opinion on this situation. So there was a case where a woman was denied entry to Radio City Music Hall because her law firm was involved in a lawsuit. Now, although the woman does not practice in New York and was not involved in the case, she was still denied access to the show because her face was recognized in their system. Can you just tell me your opinion on that? It sounds kind of scary to someone else probably reading this. So can you just tell me what your thoughts on that whole situation is, and whether or not facial recognition could be, I guess, something that's good or something that could be more on the negative side?
Sure. So with the caveat that I'm a criminal defense lawyer, my expertise is really in law enforcement use of this technology, and this is really about a third-party private business, but I'm happy to give my opinion for what it's worth. I think this is a really interesting question and goes to the heart of what we were talking about a little bit ago in terms of the law just not keeping up with the technology. So businesses tracking people and not letting them in has happened in a much smaller way for a long time. So I think probably everyone has had the experience of going into a gas station or somewhere and seeing a sign on the wall that has a picture that says, like, this person isn't to be let back in, right? Or businesses might have a list of, like, these few people have shoplifted here, or a bar might have a list and say, these people have caused problems, don't let them back in. What's different about facial recognition, it's essentially doing the same work, but on such a massive scale that all of a sudden it makes us much more uncomfortable. And it's part of why the law hasn't caught up, because in many ways, the law sees this facial recognition situation as analogous with a business owner saying, these 5 people have caused problems, I won't let them in. But the truth is, what's happening and what happened at Radio City Music Hall is they're probably going through millions of people and are able to track people on an unprecedented scale. And again, our law just has not been able to keep up with that reality and see the real difference in that situation and a bar saying these 5 people consistently cause problems, don't let them in. Whether or not you think that that's a problem is really up for any individual to decide. But I think in any event, it's really something we have to contend with, and we have to be honest with ourselves about the difference here.
Now, in regards to just law enforcement, can New York City expect to see facial recognition being more widely used in regards to law and policing?
Sure. Actually, law enforcement's already widely using facial recognition technology in policing. You can imagine how appealing this technology is to police officers, because what it has the potential to do, albeit I would argue not nearly as accurately as law enforcement would like to believe, is to take cases that are otherwise unsolvable and provide the police with a suspect, right? This is the kind of technology that the police can use in cases where there is no DNA, there are no fingerprints, there are no witnesses, all we've got is surveillance. And it's really appealing to use a type of technology that says, hey, even if you've got none of that, I can help you figure out who committed this crime. I think what is really scary is that law enforcement are not scientists. They are the ones using this technology, but are not really trained to deeply understand it. And therefore are often left with the impression that it is much more accurate than it in fact is.
Well, Kaitlin, thank you so much for joining me. I definitely learned a lot today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more Open right after this.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
I know what you're thinking. I need a job.
Well, I've been there.
I've been there.
But you gotta keep going.
You just need the right skills. Find an apprenticeship.
I found a course online.
You can do this.
You will find something.
You will find something new.
¿Qué color? Perfecto, mijo. Gracias. Thank you. What's wrong, Mabel?
Donating to a pet's medical care is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Welcome back. For the first time since 1969, there will be a new garbage pickup schedule. Mayor Eric Adams announced a new garbage pickup plan back in October, and the changes were put into effect on April 1st. This effort is designed to reduce the amount of time trash is left on New York City streets. Joining me to discuss the new rules is Deputy Commissioner for Public Affairs and Customer Service Experience for the NYC Department of Sanitation, Joshua Goodman. Joshua, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, can you first, I kind of know what the Department of Sanitation is, but for those who don't know, can you just give us a general overview of what that sector of New York City is like?
Yeah, well, I find it hard to believe that any New Yorker wouldn't know what the Department of Sanitation is. I mean, we are the essential service, right? Every New Yorker deals with the Department of Sanitation every single day as we collect and process 24 million pounds of trash and recycling off of our curbs. It's about 10,000 people who work for the department, and we're the ones who collect and process all the material that people leave out. We clean 19,000 miles of lane miles, that is, of roadway in the city on a regular basis. And we're the ones in green who you see out there doing the job to keep the city clean, safe, and healthy.
Now, as I mentioned, there are new rules. Can you tell me what these new rules are?
So New York City, prior to the start of these new rules, which began April 1st, had the earliest trash set out time of any major city in the country. Trash could go out at 4 p.m., which meant that those 24 million pounds a day that I mentioned would sit on our curbs for sometimes 14 hours or more. And that attracts rats, but it also forced this game of hopscotch where New Yorkers have to navigate around it every day. And there really is no reason it needs to be that way, but it had been for about 50 years. So what went into effect April 1st is a significant shortening of the time that the trash goes out on the curb. Now, for residents, you can put it out at 8 p.m. if you're putting a black bag on the curb. If you want to do it earlier, you can do 6 p.m. in a bin with a secure lid to keep the rats away. And then there's new rules for businesses, too. Again, no black bags on the curb before 8 p.m. And if you need to do earlier, you can do an hour before closing, but you have to use a bin.
Now, why are we seeing these changes at this time?
Mayor Adams and Commissioner Tisch, who leads the sanitation department, have a commitment to get stuff clean. The city, I think it's no surprise to most New Yorkers, everybody would agree, got appreciably, noticeably dirtier over the course of the pandemic. And that is because at the start of the pandemic, the cleaning budget for the Department of Sanitation was basically completely defunded. And when Adams came in, he started with sort of restoring and going above and beyond on those cleanliness functions. So we're running the highest level of litter basket service in history. We're cleaning what we call no man's land areas in every neighborhood that had been ignored for decades because of jurisdictional issues. It wasn't clear whose responsibility it was. Now it's our responsibility, and we're happy to be cleaning it regularly. But then we wanted to go beyond that and think strategically. What are big plans? What are things that we can change? What are new things we can do? And the early set out time was one of those things where it was just like, why has it just been this way for generations with all of this trash out right when New Yorkers are trying to come home from work or come home from school? So, worked with partners in organized labor, with other stakeholders in the city council, and came up with this plan to put it more in line with international best practices.
Now, I was really interested in the part where you mentioned about the budget, because I do remember hearing something about that quite some time ago, but I didn't realize how much it makes an impact on our city streets. And I think that a lot of New Yorkers, we see things happening, but we don't know why they're happening. So can you just kind of refer to that budget again and just like why that was so important?
So in March of 2020, the city had to make some very difficult budget choices. I mean, all of us who were here will never forget what it was like. But one of those, the Department of Sanitation traditionally has had three main functions. That's to collect the trash, that's to clear the snow, and that's to clean public spaces. And that cleaning budget was wiped out. And New Yorkers saw the difference almost overnight. I mean, the next day, the streets looked dirtier. So bringing that back at the start of the Adams administration was a very important step, and I think it's made a big difference. Our litter basket complaints, for example, when people call and say this basket is overflowing, when that service kicked in, the new funding under Mayor Adams, they went down 55%, which is the largest year-over-year decrease in history. So, giving us the funding and support to exercise our core functions is huge. And then these new strategic initiatives like changing the set-out time is also a key part of the strategy here to get the streets clean.
Now, I know another major concern for a lot of people, is the presence of rats in New York City. I'm seeing it everywhere, actually, like all online, and like people are kind of making funny jokes about it. But, rats have become like really present in our city. Has this always been an issue for New York? I guess, would you know, has it always been an issue for New York?
Well, I'll say we're not the lead agency on rats. The Department of Health is the lead of the city's rat mitigation efforts. We do participate in it by trying to get that rat food off the street, and that's what this is about, reducing the amount of time that it sits out there. Also, our citywide curbside composting program that's rolling out over the next year and a half will be huge. People don't always think of composting as a rat mitigation program, but it is. Getting the rat food out of the black bags and into separate secure containers will make a meaningful difference. And that's a good segue to talk about another piece of the set-out time change, is that we are not just asking New Yorkers to change, we are changing too. We are collecting more trash than ever before, especially in high-density areas like the Bronx, on our midnight shift instead of our 6 a.m. shift, which means we'll get the trash earlier. We're moving our 6 a.m. shift also to 5 a.m. start. So New Yorkers will see less of the trash. Most of it will be gone before they get up. And we've moved about 2,500 of the largest buildings in the city to a 4 to 7 a.m. set out, meaning we get the trash almost immediately. So all of these things that we are doing on our end, plus what we are asking New Yorkers to do, will make a huge difference in the way that the trash sort of interacts with the streetscape, whether rats have access to that all-night, all-you-can-eat buffet, and what it looks like out there.
Now, I really like that you said that it's kind of like a collaboration between your organization and, New Yorkers. I never thought of it that way before, but it's very true. Now, I want to you talked about what you could do, but I want to talk about what New Yorkers could do, because I do notice a lot of time, just in my own personal experience, a lot of people kind of just throw trash on the ground, or maybe there's not a garbage can nearby, so they're tired of holding it and they just throw it on the floor. What have you noticed in regard to that? Do you think littering is like a really huge issue for New York City?
It is, and it's really something that boggles my mind. I mean, it's one of the most antisocial things that a person can do, to just think like, oh, this is someone else's problem. Like, I don't really understand. Look, I've lived in New York a long time. I know you've lived in New York a long time. I'm sure most of your viewers have. I always think that one of the things that makes our city special is the way we look out for each other, the way we look out for our communities, how proud we are of our neighborhoods. And the thought process of someone who goes, I'm just going to drop this coffee cup. I'm just going to drop this tissue. I'm going to drop this candy bar wrapper. I will never understand it. And I think that all of us have to call it out when we see it. Hey, I live here. Don't do that. Don't drop that here. There's no excuse for littering.
Now, I want to know, are there any efforts to maybe encourage more New Yorkers to stop littering? I know that like sometimes in certain areas, you don't really see a lot of garbage cans. And I've noticed that like sometimes community members will like make their own like makeshift garbage cans. Has there been any effort to kind of like help New Yorkers kind of go in a different direction so they're not littering?
Well, I think that I don't want to get ahead of something we have coming. We are talking about what we can do to remind people that littering is such an unacceptable behavior. It's something that's very important to us. The basket question is actually sort of a divisive one in the solid waste municipal management world, because baskets, people put their litter in the basket. Litter baskets can actually also become a place that attracts litter. People go, I could just leave my bags of trash next to the litter basket because they're going to come empty anyway. So there are community members who don't want more litter baskets. So it's something we look at when we get those requests for additional baskets. Do we think this will help or hurt in this specific community? There is a way to request a new basket through 311, and we look at it, we consider those requests. But this is something that has to start with every individual. This is where that collaboration comes in. The city is, look, all of us, we live in our small apartments, right? The city is our living room. You wouldn't do it in your living room at home. Don't do it in my living room, which is our neighborhoods.
Now, I want to talk about collaboration again, because I know that you mentioned the situation with the rats is more a Department of Health. Because they seem to kind of be affecting each other, has there ever been any talks about working together to see what could be done?
Very closely together. There is a citywide rat mitigation task force, of which we're a member, and the health department is a member, and many other agencies, parks, are involved in that. And as you probably know, Mayor Adams is getting ready to announce the hiring of a rat czar, a citywide director of rodent mitigation, who will help coordinate all of those efforts.
Now, are there any consequences for falling behind on the new trash rule? Like, what can happen if you kind of still follow the old rules?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So first of all, during this month, April, we're only doing written warnings. We know change is hard. We want to give people a chance to adjust. But beginning May 1st, we are going to be around writing fines, and especially for the people who got those written warnings. So don't think, oh, I got a warning, I'm off the hook, they won't be back for a year. No. We're keeping track of who got the written warnings, and we're going to come back in May and make sure you did a better job. So the fine starts at $50, then it goes up to $100, then $200, and all will be $200 beyond that. So, the easiest thing you can do for a clean street is just follow the rules.
And this is for homeowners and business owners as well?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay. Now, I want to talk a little bit about renters, because they have kind of a different situation, and they have to deal with landlords. What is the guidelines for people who live in, I guess, apartment buildings, and they kind of just throw their trash maybe on the side of the building? What are the guidelines for those people?
Oh, well, if you see that your landlord, whoever is not following the rules, definitely say, hey, you heard about this, right? There's the new rule in place. We're going to get a warning. But look, that's what our enforcement staff will be out for. We're going to be working directly with whoever is putting the trash out at the wrong time. We hope we're going to see really heavy compliance.
Well, Joshua, thank you so much for joining me to talk about this. I definitely learned a lot, and I was really kind of excited to talk about, just littering in general, just because it is something that I've noticed, and I'm not happy about it either. So thank you so much for talking about that.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
For the complete list of the new rules setting out garbage for both residents and business owners, please visit www.nyc.gov/setouttimes. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recablecast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and your safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.